Hello and welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures that Outperform. I'm Frank Wander, the CEO and founder of People Productive, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Terri Mays.
Hello.
If you've been following the series, you know that we've been covering a lot of experiments and telling you how these relate to the workplace. They're all very interesting. Today, we're going to be talking about learned helplessness. And Terri, I don't know, do you want to start off on learned helplessness?
Yeah,
But this is a change up, you know?
it is a change up. I wasn't expecting the change up. Well, let's go with it. All right. So, learned helplessness is all about people feeling like I can't do anything about the situation. I've kind of just resigned into the point of no matter what I do, I can't change it. I feel stuck. So it's that place of feeling like you just don't know how to get out of whatever it is. And so you just resign into this is how it's going to be. So I'm just going to act accordingly. So whatever happens, happens. I don't try to put forth any effort to make things better for myself. I don't try to change my situation in any way. I just kind of resign and kind of fall into it, kind of fall into this space of I can't do anything about it. When you feel like you have just given up all hope, there's nothing I can do. So I might as well just deal with it. I might as well just live with the circumstances I have. You see this a lot in people that are depressed, that feel like, I have no way out. I cannot change things. And so people just start to decide, hey, I'm just going to turn all those emotions inward. I'm just going to be, this sad person because I don't have a way out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Learned helplessness actually comes from an experiment that Martin Selig conducted in 1965, University of Pennsylvania. He was looking into Pavlovian conditioning, and he had a group of dogs, and he had an person he was doing this experiment with, and they rang a bell, and then they shocked the dogs. And they proved that they could condition them to have the same reaction to the ringing bell without shocking them as they did when they shocked them. So they just fell right into that mode. A little while after, he put the dogs in a cage, and you could go look up this experiment online. And let me share this here. So he put the dogs in a cage like this, where one side of the cage, they could shock them, and the other side of the cage, there was no shocking available. And he ran the experiment. He, rang the bell, shocked the dog, and he fully expected the dog to jump over to the other side of the cage. But it didn't happen. The dogs in the experiment actually laid down on the side where the shocking was occurring. And so they were confounded by this. They didn't expect this at all. They got new dogs that had never been conditioned to be shocked when the bell went off. And the minute they put them in the cage, they rang the bell, they shocked them, they all jumped over the wall. The wall was a very little thing, just like this. You could go look the experiment up. This is actually a YouTube version here, Learned Helplessness Experiment, Martin Seligman. And so what they realized is that this notion of learned helplessness exists, and it's taken on kind of its own life over time. You hear people talk about it. That's where it comes from. And it clearly happens in the workplace. As a leader, you should be aware of this. A few weeks back, we talked about self-handicapping, which is a little different. Self-handicapping says, I don't think I can get it done. I'm going to protect my ego and predict failure in advance, and then I could do the I told you so. This is actually the environment training you to do nothing, to take no action at all. It's different. You can take the whole place and make everybody helpless. And so leaders should be on the lookout for this. If you have an environment where people bring up ideas all the time and they're just, no one ever does anything, nobody acts on them, those people, if they're really good, are going to go to an environment where they can make an impact and have influence. But many of them just stop suggesting stuff. And there's a saying, right? The day your leaders stop bringing you problems is the day you stop leading. And it's really true. So this applies in the workplace. We'll talk about some of the situations and what you could do about it. But be aware of this. Environments condition people. This is conditioning.
Yeah. If
um,
people start to feel like, they're getting their head bit off if they raise their hand or they ask a question, if people are snapping at them or, they're stressed out, there are other conditions in the environment where it's just a toxic environment. And you have people that just bite your head off if you ask a question or if you bring up things or make suggestions or anything like that. It's going to condition people to stop raising their hand. It's going to condition them to stop making suggestions. And this is very limiting if you want to be an innovative environment. If you want to have lots of innovation and creativity flowing, you have to give people a safe space to do that, to feel like they can share their ideas and not be penalized for sharing them, or not be told that that was dumb or that wasn't a very good idea or that's not the right thing. You always accept the idea, even if it's not such a great idea, because as you think about that idea, it may trigger you to think about something else. So there's never really a bad idea. It just may not fit what you're trying to solve, but you want those creative juices flowing. You want people to feel safe enough to share what's on their mind so that you can get to some really good ideas. And this place of learned helplessness, people will shrink into that. And, I keep saying shrink back and fall back because that's how I feel when I do it. So we all do it at some point in time, but I feel like I'm just resigning. I'm just laying down like, okay, that's it. I'm giving up. When you feel like you're giving up and you don't have any more options, you don't feel like you can change the situation, then you're shrinking into this learned helplessness. So at that point, you really do have to decide, how am I going to proceed? Am I going to stay in this environment? But I have a choice. So you never really are completely helpless. With everything, you always have a choice. There's always something different that you can do. You may not be able to come up with the choices on your own. You may have to reach out for support, get a colleague to help you, get someone else outside of that team to help you. But there's always a choice to be made. You can always do something different so that you don't have to compromise who you are for the sake of an environment that doesn't necessarily appreciate who you are.
yeah, and I think Terry makes an excellent point, right? You always have options. Now, if you're a leader and you come into an environment, one of the questions you should ask, are there a set of things that people really want to change that they've given up on, that they don't think we can change? Because you're going to want to know what those are. Those are things in the environment that are in the way of people really performing at their best and being productive. Ask questions. Build really good relationships in the workplace. And, people who, care about you are going to say, hey, look, you look like you're ready to give up. What's going on? They're going to have your best interests in mind. So relationships are going to help you in environments like that, because
Yeah.
in groups, there's more power and more strength. Maybe you could tackle some of these challenges as a team. You don't have to be the lone wolf crying out about stuff.
Yeah, as a leader, you definitely want to make sure you have some people on your team that will be honest with you, that will really tell you how it is. It's easy to just say what you think the leader wants to hear. And most of the time when people are building teams, they want positive and encouraging people on the team. And that's true. You do want that. But you also want that person that will just tell it like it is, that'll
Yeah.
really give you the honest truth about things and not try to sugarcoat it, not try to, hide it, but really tell you how it is so you can make some improvements. You can't get well if you're trying to correct the person that you are trying or pretending to be. You
Yeah.
have to correct the person that you actually are. So being able to recognize what's going on in the environment when there are toxic behaviors that are limiting the environment, that are creating this learned helplessness in people where they feel like, I just quit, I give up. So they're doing that, I quit, but they're still there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's even worse because now,
Presenteeism.
yeah, they're present, but they're absent. They're not producing. They're not, definitely not being innovative and creative. They're not giving you their very best. They're giving you the bare bones minimums. And a lot of times that comes from environments where people have just learned to be helpless and to think that they can't make a difference. You don't want to have a work environment where people feel like I never make a difference. I can, no matter what I do, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. You really want people to feel like they are making a difference, that what they're doing matters. And we've talked a lot about this on previous episodes. So I encourage you to go back and look at some of those. But it's so important for people to feel like they're valued and they're making a difference, because otherwise you teach them to be helpless. You teach them to only do what I ask you to do and nothing more.
Yeah, empowerment's so important. People have to be fully empowered. And, if you're a leader in an environment where, maybe people do feel that there's not enough chance for advancement or change, they've given up asking, you can always create really good work for people. You can start things up that are really interesting. If people have unused skills, you can take advantage of those skills in very, very clever ways, give people a lot more challenge and fulfillment in the workplace. You don't have to accept a bad status quo. You just don't as a leader. There's a lot of things you could do to create an environment where people start to get re-energized and start to feel, hey, look, we can really make a difference here. Let's do something.
Yeah. When you feel that heaviness and fatigue in the environment, because you feel it, right? So when people are tired, and if it's the whole team, you get that sense when you walk into the room that people are tired. You can hear it in the conversation. You can see it on people's faces. If you're observant,
Oh, yeah.
begin to pay
Smile
attention to
index.
how people,
Smile index goes way down.
yes, they go down there, very in meetings. You notice it a lot in meetings when you've had meeting fatigue and you've been in too many meetings. You're just kind of like, oh, when is this going to be over? But you have to be there. And so your brain just starts checking out and doing other things. You're focused on something else. And then somebody asks the question and you're like, huh, can you repeat that? Like, because you have no idea. You were totally gone. So once you start seeing people do that, it's really a sign that they're in distress and that this learned helplessness behavior might be taking place. So you want to intervene as soon as you recognize it.
Yeah, very, very important. If you ever find yourself falling into that uncomfortable comfort zone where you're not challenged and things aren't happening, you've made a lot of suggestions, the ideas aren't being acted on, you do have to take action. Like Terri says, you always have a choice. You have to do something, span the boundaries. Don't settle for just being stuck in some comfort zone, because it's not going to serve you well. And it tells you a lot about the environment when you're in a place where learned helplessness is what's going on. Because certainly we've all seen it, those toxic people who run around that nobody challenges, right? And
Yes.
you could go for our look at our series on people unproductive, all these different personality types that are toxic to productivity. Great series. Some of them persist for such a long time in organizations. It just blows my mind. And people just give up trying to take them on. It's just not even worth it because somehow they survive. Pretty amazing.
Yeah. When you have those connections, or I should say, when they have connections, they've got connections with leaders and people that respect them just to the point that they don't really know who they are. So sometimes you'll have people portray themselves one way to leadership, but then to their peers and to everybody else, they portray themselves in a different way. So they hide and masquerade. It's really a lot of manipulation in that people are just trying to manipulate situations and other people to get what they want. So you have to be careful about that as a leader, that you really do start to get to know people and know when people are giving you their pretend face.
Yeah, yeah.
They're being completely transparent and open and honest with you.
Yeah. So as a leader, you always have a choice too. You can dig in and find out. You should have your antenna up. You should know what's going on. You should understand the baseline state of your environment. You should immediately be able to see when that environment and that mood is changing. You should dig in. If there is learned helplessness, you should spot it. You should ask the questions, especially if you're coming into a new area. You should really dig in during that period where you've got to really stabilize the environment, get to know everybody, dig into this. This is a real condition. It happens in many, many places. Make sure people are challenged. As an individual, you have choices. Break out of your comfort zone. Don't fall into this. Don't become a victim of an environment like this, because they're terrible. They really are.
Absolutely.
Well, so you can look this up online. Lots of really good research. As I said, we're covering a different experiment each week and seeing how that applies to the workplace. We're here every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Hope you enjoy the show, and we'll see you next week for another great experiment. Take care.
Yes. Bye for now.